let me turn it over to the people that are shaking their heads and nodding and waving their fists. I'm not sure who's up first, but Brian and Bree, take it away.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks so much. We apologize, guys. We were a little late to the meeting, had a few technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience. We're all kind of living in this new normal, and we are looking forward to having the discussion with you today. So, I just want to acknowledge that we're in unprecedented times. I think one of the things we're looking at now is, first, we were in triage to try to get our colleges to move online in terms of remote instruction and remote operations, and we had to do it incredibly quickly. And now that we're kind of in this new normal for a moment, we're starting to hear more about summer and fall largely being online or fully online. And I know the state chancellor's call yesterday, that was one of the discussion topics. We're also seeing that the CSUs are planning to go fully online, several of them, at least I think Fullerton was the first to announce it, to go online for next fall. So it's looking like a very strong possibility that we're going to be in this for a little bit longer in terms of how we're operating as our colleges. So that just means that with all of our remote instruction happening, Canvas is going to become an even more important tool for us to be able to utilize to access information and use it to inform decisions on our colleges. So really excited that Brian's going to actually show us one of the tools that's available at another university. But I also want to acknowledge that I don't know that any of us, and maybe someone on the call is, but I don't know that any of us are there, if you will, in terms of really fully utilizing Canvas, partially because I don't know that any of us could have anticipated what this semester was going to look like. But so we're really excited to, again, get the conversation started. So Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay. My microphone's picking up.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, Bree, it's very interesting you said there, if anybody's there. And we, to be 100% transparent, we at Butte are not there. But I felt like, given the situation, I wanted to be able to share with everybody some of the information that I had found and sort of the test bed that I've put together to start pulling data from Canvas. Let me share my screen here. Okay, and I am not the Zoom guru by any stretch. So if you guys send comments or in the chat, if somebody else could monitor that for me, I would really appreciate it.
I will be doing that for you, no problem.
Awesome. Okay, so where this started, the nexus of where this started was I had a meeting with some folks on our SLO committee, and we were looking at ways to maybe use Canvas data to track whether or not SLOs are being met by students. And so I was looking at what we could do and hopefully trying to come up with something over the summertime and then maybe get it ready to share at our campus next fall. And that all went out the window with what's going on now. Anyway, met with some instructor folks, and they recommended this GitHub package from Eastern Michigan University for institutions that are using SQL Server. And like I said, this is a test bed, and I am testing it locally. We have not had the IT assets yet to put this up into something live on Butte servers. But if you have experience with SQL Server, sort of the back end, then this is a package that will get you where you need to be as far as being able to take data from Canvas and move it on to a system. The Eastern Michigan University folks have done a great job of coming up with some instruction on how to use the package. And they break it down into some fairly simple steps. What is it that you need? Well, you need SQL Server 2012 or later. And you need to make sure that you've got enough disk space to be able to pull in all the Canvas data, because there's a lot. And then it gets into the requirements, etc. Let me go real quickly to what kind of data is going to be pulled over in, and then I'll jump back to the directions. Okay. If you do a Google search for Canvas data element dictionary or Canvas data viewer data element dictionary, you will get to this page. And as you can see, there are quite a few tables. It is set up in sort of a snowflakes fashion. So you have what are fact tables, and then if you picture this in your mind logically, then there are dimension tables that go around that fact table, and then you have links back and forth between those tables so that you can pull information. So like if you wanted to pull something from the course store fact table, which contains measures for overall course scores within the Canvas gradebook, then you'll see that there are foreign keys to this in this table to dimension tables that exist. And so you can scroll through. It's not great documentation. It's certainly not as good as what our Chancellor's Office provides, but it at least gives you a basic idea of what's there. And then I would recommend data exploration once you have the data in your system. Okay, switching gears back to Eastern Michigan solution. Many of these tables do have time stamps. And if we do a quick search, there's 246 references to timestamp in this document.
Brian, could I just ask something real quick, just because I know some folks on the call may be at different levels of familiarity with some of the technical sides of this. Could you explain just what GitHub is in case folks aren't familiar with that?
Yeah, GitHub is essentially a repository of open source software. So what folks can do is they can, or what people will do, is they will post their open source projects that they want to share with the world to this service. The service is free. It's offered by Microsoft, and there are other boards out there that do something similar, but I believe that GitHub is like the largest repository for this type of information in the world.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. So anyway, the files all come up in GitHub together like this, and then the README is, some people don't provide a lot of information in the README, but essentially it's supposed to be an overview of what your project is, who will find it useful, and then what it takes to make it work. Okay. And essentially for this project, you need the files that they provide, okay? And then you need this 7-zip thing, okay? This is an unzipper, and there are multiple of those, but you need to use the one that they are providing. or the one that they reference. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It does get fairly technical in that the things that you have to do are you have to use the SQL Server command prompt essentially, but it does tell you exactly what you need to do step by step. So it's like following a recipe. And if you follow step by step, then eventually you will have, you know, your cake or whatever at the end. Okay, so you go through this thing, you do it, and then what do you get? Well, this is SQL Server here. Something that you perhaps know and love, or know and hate. And this creates two databases, okay? The first is the Canvas data store, okay? And this holds all the raw tables that come over from Canvas, okay? And so these tables that you're seeing here match up to that data element dictionary that I showed. The next thing that gets created is this Canvas data viewer. And what this does is it houses a lot of views. So they already linked all those dimension tables to the fact tables for you. So that really cuts down on the amount of work that you have to do as an analyst or as a person using this. But of course, there's still work. Anyway, so this is a very simple SQL statement here. It says select the top 100 asterisk from the Pseudonym table. This table has, or this view has login information for students, and then I can pop in a date, and if I execute that, then I get results. Okay, so these are all the first 100 students listed who have logged into Canvas since the 1st of April. Okay, and there's information in here about like the last time that they logged in and the current time that they logged in, IPs and stuff if you're interested in that. It does also provide the user ID, so then you're able, or the SIS ID if you have it set up that way. So then you can link this data back to your ERP system, and then you can delve into, all right, are there trends? Is there disproportionate impact? Are there certain courses where folks are logging into and certain courses where they're not logging in? And then if I move this over, I don't know if you can see it. This is kind of interesting. Since it's a fact table, it does some calculations for you. So like this student has logged into Canvas 798 times throughout their history using Canvas. And so this is an example of some of the information that you can get from Canvas by doing this process. Yeah, so the data is not in real time. The data refreshes however often you make it refresh. And you can set up a SQL Server job to go out and fetch the data. So we do this once a day. And it takes about 35-40 minutes to run through the whole process of pulling the data in, building the table, rebuilding the tables, and populating the data. So it does take some time. It's not something where they don't have it set up, as far as I know, where you could just instantaneously look at a moment by moment what is happening. At least not with this particular solution. I do know that Canvas does offer some other solutions that they host on like Amazon Web Services, but that requires budget.
Hey, Brian, getting back to your original use case of getting the SLO information out, I mean, do they have a table or a view, or does Eastern Michigan have a table or a view that's associated with the outcomes module?
Yeah, so as far as the Canvas data portal here, there are there's this learning outcome fact table and other learning outcome fact tables as well. I have not delved into this into any sort of detail. And it is also something that's very new for our institution. So I'm not sure exactly what I would get out of this quite yet. Let's see here. One thing that could be, that I think would be kind of interesting going forward, beyond just the basics of, okay, are folks logging in, would be something along the lines of, actual how much work they are doing in Canvas. Are they communicating via the message boards? Are they turning in assignments? And I think that there is a real strong place for that data going forward, as we try to identify students who may not be having behaviors on Canvas that would lead them to be successful, right? And being able to provide student services with that kind of information so that they could actively reach out to students who are not being as engaged in the Canvas environment. But again, that's all very new.
One more related question, Brian, and I know you just said you haven't delved into this maybe quite as much as you could. For some schools, the substantive interaction has become an issue for accreditation purposes or other things. Without looking at individual faculty messages and things, do you think there is a way that you could use some of this data to show accreditors or other folks that, yes, our faculty are engaging the students individually in that substantive way?
That would be something to look into, at least preliminarily. Like every message that somebody sends is within this data set. So there are ways to code so that you could count the number of messages. Maybe you could, if you got a little sophisticated, look at the average number of replies or something like that. So I think that data is there. It will take a little bit of effort to tease it out. But at least this gives you sort of the building blocks, right?
Okay, so we've got a couple of comments and questions here in the chat on any data that would provide a way to measure regular and substantive interactions. And if we covered this just now, we can move on. But she says between instructor and students or among students other than the number of logons.
I did find something that had the, let's see here, conversation message, maybe this one, file fact. I did find one that had like all the conversation history. So let's see here. This one I don't think is it, but what you can see is that it's related to like documents and things that have been uploaded to Canvas. So I think all of that capability is there. I just haven't delved into it to any great detail yet. My main goal was just to share with the group that, hey, this exists, and if you have the desire for this information, go get it, because it works.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share the results of the live poll again as a segue to help set up Bree for what she would like to share with you guys. So here we go.
Thanks, Olivia. You know, and I think this is a perfect example of kind of where we are. We're kind of all over the map in terms of some of us have access to Canvas data and they have experience working with it. And what Brian showed you is giving you a lot of options for how you might proceed. Some of us have limited experience working with the data, and some of us don't, they haven't worked with it at all. So this is definitely advanced and gives a great opportunity for us to dig in and get some of those analytics. I did just want to mention, you know, for our college, I think one of the big things we've been discussing is, you know, and again, in this remote environment, all of this is taking on new meaning. And we started looking just into our canned Canvas reports, which, you know, we didn't even have access to. We actually worked with our distance education folks, our DE coordinator and our instructional designer to get access to some canned reports out of Canvas that would give us just some utilization data so that we could look at, for example, what things look like before we went to remote instruction and then when we went fully online, because then at that point, every class had a Canvas container. And the idea for us was to try to look at that in combination with survey data that we had gotten from our students. So we sent out a survey to students a couple of weeks after we went fully remote to get a sense of what the students' challenges were and if they had access to a working computer, if they had access to Wi-Fi. And we found that a lot of our students actually didn't have that. You know, about 17% of our students didn't have access to a working computer and around 10% didn't have access to Wi-Fi. We're still trying to grapple with that. But some of the comments that came in that survey were things like, I haven't heard from my instructor, or I don't know because they're not communicating in Canvas and those kinds of things. So in an effort to not have this be any kind of punitive process, but more of a developmental process, we're trying to do some proactive outreach and working with our instructional and student services folks to make sure that we're targeting faculty for professional development and trying to assist them, provide technical assistance through this transition. And then that we're working with students who may not have access so that we can prioritize grants or other resources to get that information and to get a computer or Wi-Fi access, a hotspot or something into their hands, because this becomes an equity issue very quickly. Now that we've switched to remote instruction, there are a lot of students that we're leaving behind. And of course, we didn't make this choice without, you know, we didn't have other options. It wasn't like it was a choice that we decided to just go fully online. We're obviously responding to the public health crisis in front of us, but we just can't forget that we've got some students out there that are not able to access their materials through Canvas or through any kind of online modality. So I think, you know, one of the things we want to just mention is that, you know, even the basic canned reports that come out of Canvas, which, you know, that's what we've been using. They're called zero activity reports. So we can see, like, at certain points in the semester, where are we seeing there not be any activity in certain Canvas courses, and being able to, again, use that information, which is a lot less advanced than all the information you could get out of Canvas. But for us, it was a very practical thing to do.
And this question comes from a conversation that we've been having internally about the metrics that are available or the data that's available in Canvas being kind of unevenly distributed across classes and instructors because there isn't necessarily one standard way to interact with a course shell, right? So whereas one instructor might have certain features enabled or emphasize certain features, so you'll see a certain behavior of clicking and engagement, that's not even across all. So what's maybe like, what's a high level, and you were speaking to this, Bree, when you were talking about the high level reports that you use, what's a good way to span all that diversity and, you know, class shell construction and instructor student engagement, and if is there, or do you have to get down to the granular level of every class instance?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, Craig. I think it's we're still digging into. This was a relatively recent thing for us, and I don't know about the rest of the folks on the call, but I know for us it just was a pragmatic way to kind of deal with the question that kept coming up in different meetings, which was, well, students aren't necessarily engaging in the class. So there's another issue we were trying to address with ours, and we haven't looked through every possible Canvas report in Canvas because we literally got access about 3 weeks ago. But essentially, one of the things we'd be looking at is there are some students who there's a concern about, obviously, that they've stopped participating in the class, and we want to be able to reach out to them both through their faculty and through student services to make, to try to encourage them to stay in the class and actually and participate and engage. And again, we want to find out what their reasons are for not doing that. So that's something we're trying to triangulate information so that we can do that. It's a little clunky right now, to be honest, because we didn't have a frame for looking at all the possible data in Canvas. And so we haven't explored everything yet. I don't know if other colleges might be able to speak to that. I think Jake, for example, he's his district or in his college, he's looked more extensively at Canvas data.
All right, got called out. All right, so let me turn that on. So I think some of the things for Riverside Community College District is we're actually looking at accessibility with Ally running reports. And so I don't know if anyone's really dove into that, but I've been working on getting actionable research out of that for faculty members to be able to go in and get their courses accessible. I think that's a big one when it go online, and so you don't want to have any barriers that exist for students. So that's something that may come your way at some point, and I'm happy to share, point out. I think some of the issues are, though, is running into it is Canvas, there's course shells that stay alive that haven't been pulled out, and they don't necessarily hit your active course, your active courses. So I think you need to be very mindful of that when you're mining here. I think some other things that come up too is faculty members don't necessarily contact just through Canvas. So I think trying to blanket it across, you may want to be careful with it, because there's things like GroupMe, from my experience teaching online, that use, so like social media outlets that we can go to, text messaging, so that's not going to be in here with Google numbers. So there's a lot of ways that instructors actually do engage outside of Canvas. So I think from one source, it's good to get a start. The other one that we did too locally was just looking at, did they log in? If they weren't logging in, we were reaching out through our student services folks and things like that. We're reaching out to students because they were showing that they weren't actively participating in any of their courses. So there are ways like that. I think the one of, did they actually log into Canvas is probably the biggest part for anyone to look at. I think that's a quick actionable research you could do right now. It's, did they log in, did they not? So I would highly recommend that, because I know they reached out and started contacting students, offering them laptops and other resources to figure out what they needed to continually access their courses.
But he says, have you done any investigations into how well the Canvas data aligns with the data in your local SIS? For example, is every student accounted for in Canvas regardless of whether they're affiliated with a Canvas course?
Right. I can answer that question. So I think you'll have to get with your distance education folks and understand if faculty actually are able to add individuals. So some colleges have that, and they could add anyone to their course, which is not really probably the best practice when it comes to, it should be tied directly to your local SIS and uploaded and refreshed every night. So I think it really is going to depend on institution to institution. And I think you need to really dig deep and make sure you have a full understanding. Because I've been at colleges where it was refreshed every night. So you could probably say, yep, that's accurate. We don't have to worry about it. Where I think other places you'll find there's some variation there. So I think getting that and quantifying and making sure you understand the data will be the first kind of starting point with that one. I could add, actually, I just thought about that. So for me, at the one I just did for our accessibility and Ally report, what we did was we ended up matching it to our enrollment management data to make sure that it was an accurate one, because courses were created and then never taken out. So just definitely keep that in mind too, to clean the data up.
At Shasta, we use Canvas for almost all of our student services, clubs, organizations, and so forth. So our counselors are using Canvas to help align student questions when they are not in the actual office with the counselors. So the students can go in, they can go into the Canvas shell, they can post a question. And if it's a generic question, one of the counselors can answer the question. However, and then also I have the counselor set up as in the teacher role. So the student could also go into the course shell and access one of the counselors individually and send them a message through communications. Each of the clubs and organizations that use it on campus, they use it pretty effectively. I have EOPS, TRIO, our DSPS services, all using Canvas for our special populations so that they can disseminate information. They set up as assignments, they set up their mandatory meetings with their counselors. And so the students can see and track where they are in terms of, have they met, I don't know the exact number of counselor meetings that they have to have, but they have to have 3 or 4. And so the students can track whether they, whether they are on pace to meet those requirements so they can continue receiving services from those special populations. Also, they use it for communication. We're going to have a meeting or a webinar or whatever is necessary, the various things that they might do for our students. So in terms of those aspects of student services, are using it very, very effectively. And then I also, and I say I because I'm also the campus administrator at Shasta College, and so I apologize for not being more, I guess you could say, whatever, discreet or more universal in my language, but it's because I do it, and so I'm pretty much the one that does it all. So I set up shells for really anyone who wants to use it for a particular communication. And then I also, at the same time that I do that, I set up a sub account in Canvas, and I put that particular shell into its own individual sub account. So EOPS has a sub account and so forth like that. Then I can put in the director and whoever else needs to be involved with that particular shell as an administrator so they can manage the enrollments, because at my institution, the teachers cannot manage their enrollments for their particular class. So in terms of these, I guess you could say like open course shells, set them up as administrators so they can manage the enrollments, add people, take people off, put up announcements and so forth like that. So that it can become a very useful communication tool. And if you manage it in such a way where you provide some instruction to the people who are going to use it, to use the utility, set them up with a little bit of instruction on how to do it. This is how you manage your enrollments. This is how you create pages, make announcements, and so forth like that. Then from there, then I kind of just let them loose on their own. And then of course, then I make myself available to them if they have questions. But this is a way that they can maintain that communication with the students. And we were doing this before this crisis that we're facing right now, but now, especially for many of our populations, that is a way that they can receive communications to their cell phone, to their email, or whatever they might have access to.
So one more question from Alyssa. She said, Paul, are the student services spaces open public or require student login so that usage engagement by the student can be collected?
Okay, thank you for reading that again, Olivia, because I answered the question in the chat room and I'm trying to listen and type, and so
it's hard.
It did not work out great. So I'm going to answer Alyssa's question. So thank you. So it really depends on the need of the separate student services department or the need of the club or so forth like that. So for like with EOPS, it's usually I have the people do the enrollments for the students themselves. That way students don't necessarily opt in nor opt out. Now they can request it to be opted out, and then I encourage them to go ahead and remove them from those lists when they want that. But for some of the other ones, I have them set it up as a self-enroll course where the students can just opt in and they go in as the role of a student and they can get the information. So like for instance, we use it for our tutoring. And so the students can just drop in and then that way the tutors don't have to quote unquote enroll them into the course in order to receive the tutoring services. So they can just opt into that tutoring shell. The people will be monitoring it during their tutoring hours. They can answer messages. They can go live using the Zoom app within Canvas or outside of Canvas if there's a problem with it at the time. So, and there's also the chat feature. So it really kind of depends, but what I do is I try to model the course according to their needs. And so if they need it to just be kind of a drop-in self-enroll informational type thing, or if it's like with a group that has a set enrollment need, then they can just do those enrollments themselves.
Awesome.
Okay, Alyssa, and your follow-up question, does a student have to create an account for each space, or is it single sign-on, or just enroll in the shell of choice? So what would typically happen would be, there would be some kind of dissemination of the information because each course shell, when it is self-enroll, then it gets a unique URL. And so they might send that URL out in an announcement of some sort. And then the students just click it. And because they already have an account in Canvas, then all it does is just basically just enrolls them into another course. It doesn't create a unique account. The students don't have to create the account. So the way that our system is set up at my college is we have our enrollments, and then we have a mirror table that will make sure that whoever is in a particular course enrolled within our SIS system, it's mirrored in Canvas, and we make sure, and I check those every hour to make sure that those enrollments are up to date. So pretty much live or in real time, a student can enroll in a course, then within an hour to an hour and a half, then they'll be put into the Canvas shell that matches that particular course. And so we use the mirror tables to make sure that those enrollments are kept up to date. And then in cases of where it's just a self-enroll course, then the students already have an account. All they have to do is just click the link, and it gives them a little button that says enroll in the course, and then they're enrolled. And then also there's the option on each individual course to have an enroll link on the home page. So if it's like a publicly accessible course, they can click that, and then they can go right into the course without it creating any new account.
Yeah, you know, when we were building the session, we're trying to be, I would just say, like with the RP group, we're really trying to be responsive to the needs of the field and the current topics that are of the most interest. So, you know, we are hoping to, again, try to provide you opportunities to discuss during these kinds of sessions. So thank you for joining us and sharing. Thank you, Brian, for sharing the great resource on GitHub in terms of the open source tools that we have available to us, and getting into the details on that and all the possibilities that we have there. Thank you so much to everyone who weighed in the chat and via the Zoom meeting audio, to be able to share some great things about how Canvas is being used in student services and other areas. I know I walked away with a lot of great ideas to bring back to my college. And that's one of the beautiful parts of these connections, is that we can learn so much from each other. So there's a lot that's, I think, left to be explored in terms of using Canvas and really trying to maximize how we connect that with our student information system. In some cases, at some colleges, it may already be connected. In other cases, it's not, like our college. And so we have lots of different things we're working with and limitations, but there's still opportunities for us to really use that information more effectively and inform decisions on the campus related to whether it's outreach, if it's useful to look at that for accreditation, if it's useful to help with faculty professional development, or maintaining student access through different resources. Lots of great discussion here today. So thank you so much for joining us.